So just to introduce myself, I've been working with people since the last 40 years. I've been a therapist, a group leader, and I'm working really in the dimension of transformation. And of course, always looking for what creates real transformation, lasting transformation, what really creates a shift in consciousness. And in order to do that, what does it need? What is the ground that we need? How do we need to support ourselves? What do we have to deal with? So I've been on the spiritual path for many, many years, and been living in the ashram, being a very committed disciple, if you want to say it like that. They're just words. But I found out when, first of all, many years ago, my husband suddenly died. And then later on, my master died, that I was faced with something very incredible. And I call it the pain of separation. And even though I have been meditating for many, many years and being really deeply involved in meditation, when my master died, I found out that I thought I was more or less enlightened. But then when his presence left, it was like, it was suddenly like, oh yeah, you think you're enlightened? No, you're not. You're going to have to face something inside of yourself. And what I had to face and have to still face always has to do with that pain of separation. What maybe is probably one of my deepest pains from early on. And I guess it's like that for everybody. It's the pain of separation from your own being, from God, from life. We become conditioned and we lose contact to the beauty, who we really are. So, and this pain of separation, then really this deepest pain brought me to vulnerability. And that's really what I want to talk about. I've forgotten to click. So the pain of separation, of course, happens to all of us. I think everybody will experience it in different forms. But for me it happens through facing death very strongly. It also happens through endings of relationship that we all know. It happens through rejection. It happens through that we don't belong. You always feel like you're an outsider. You're not part of it. You're not really belong to something. And that pain of separation, then when we go into the deeper place of the heart, wait, there's another one. That pain of separation. This is a very simplified version. Please don't think it's complicated. But on one hand, the heart is very, very simple. And I just wrote it like that because it makes it more clearer. So when on the emotional heart, what I know, and I know from many people that I work with, when we get hurt, deeply hurt, personal, impersonal, we usually shut down and we create a ring of defense around our heart. Is that familiar to anybody, or am I just talking weird language? Yeah. So our heart in itself is undisturbed, of course, but when we relate, we start to then create a protection. Yeah, we become mistrustful, we become careful, we become a little bit, we become mistrustful, and often out of that we create a ring of isolation around our heart, and that ring of isolation really inside, when you really feel it in that isolation, you can feel your fear, the anger, you can feel our hurt, and you can feel our defenses. We shut down. Even a little bit, it's already a shutdown. We shut down our real vulnerability. We don't want to be really vulnerable. We want to be vulnerable to a certain extent. We want to be vulnerable if you don't hurt me, if you don't leave me, if you do what I want you to do, and if you stay with me forever. Then I might open up my deepest vulnerability to you. So we open up conditionally, but not unconditionally. And having been a seeker for so many years, of course, I try to mostly move into meditation. That means trying to get away from feelings. And by dealing with that inner pain of separation, I then discovered that actually to feel those feelings and to feel that vulnerability is absolutely essential. And most of my spiritual path has been trying to get up, and I try to get away from it. And often I see that in seekers, not always, please, no generalization, but I know that many people, when they move into meditation, we're trying to move away from the suffering, up and up. We dissociate. Yeah? And in that dissociation, of course, we're happily dissociated, so you don't know you're dissociated. But thanks to trauma work that really came into the general knowledge in the 90s and really has deeply enriched the work that we do with ourselves and with people right now, we learn to come down and in instead of up and about. And down and in also means, of course, I have to feel my feelings. But most spiritual seekers that I know, they're all committed meditators, don't really want to feel feelings. We want to be beyond feelings. We don't want to feel vulnerable. We don't want to feel anger. We don't want to feel all those little nitty-gritty feelings. We want to feel good. We want to celebrate. We want to be above it all. Wonderful. I need some water. But to really go into the heart and really allow ourselves to feel our feelings, for most people, I think, is quite difficult. We go like, yeah, a little bit, but then that's it. It's the small stuff that I don't want to deal with. We don't want to be vulnerable. And most of you who are in relationships, long or short, you will know that vulnerability is one of the things that is once you're in a longer relationship, you start to project, you have a certain way of relating with each other, but to really become vulnerable, to be that open and that sensitive is often quite difficult. Yeah, we protect ourselves. Yeah, we want to feel good, we want things to be okay. So the vulnerability of the heart, as I discovered, is really a human dimension that most of us don't want to go to. We want to be vulnerable to a certain extent, but not really that open, not really that sensitive. And I learned through walking the path of love that to really embrace the human vulnerability and also embracing our helplessness. There are situations in life where you are helpless. When death comes or you get abandoned or situations happen in everybody's life where suddenly you're like, what am I going to do with this? There's nothing I can do. You're just faced with an existential challenge. And how do we face that existential challenge? Am I really, really able to allow that helplessness, not hopelessness, but that helplessness? Am I really able to open to that vulnerability? And of course, I know myself, it's not easy to be vulnerable. It's difficult. We're much rather cut off and be happy-go-lucky or meditate or, whatever. We do all kinds of, we learn so many ways not to be vulnerable. Our whole conditioning around is protection against that real vulnerability. So I think that to really even honor that, even allow that, even let yourself feel that, once you allow yourself to really come, and that's what I find out about working with people, it's like once you come into that vulnerability, you come into the heart, and through the heart you really touch, you wake up through the depth of your heart. Then you touch essence. But it is like a humanness. We are human. And often when we become meditators, we want to become gods. We're trying to get out. We want to get away from it all. We don't really want to be that human. I want to be human if. So, and I think the vulnerability is just part of who we are. And to really show your vulnerability, not so easy. It's often not so easy to really allow somebody be there with open hands, where often they're open hands and the other hand is like this. I love you if. So that denial of vulnerability that we all learned from early on, we learned not to be vulnerable. Our whole conditioning is designed for that. Then, of course, also creates the shadow side, because we push our sensitivity away. We push our delicacy away. And in that vulnerability, we also push the delicate part of our lovingness away also. Does that make sense? Or am I just talking therapist bullshit? Okay, good. So, I love this quote. I think it's one of those beautiful, beautiful understandings. If only it were all so simple. If only there were evil people somewhere insidiously committing evil deeds, and it were necessary to separate them from the rest of us and destroy them. But the line dividing good and evil cuts through the heart of every human being. And who is willing to destroy a piece of his own heart? Wonderful Solzhenitsyn quote that really speaks to me about owning our vulnerability, and in that vulnerability also owning our shadow side. We have to stop putting it out there. It's not out there, it's inside of me. And inside of me, the transformation can happen, but I have to own my shadow side. And that might be vulnerability. Your shadow might work out because you don't want to be vulnerable, so then I became powerful. I became controlling. I become powerful. I become greedy. If you look what we do today to nature, how we erase everything, where does it come from? It comes out of that unconscious destruction. Unconscious. It's all what is pushed into the darkness inside of me. Because I don't want to be vulnerable, I don't want to own my blind spots. And then we can blame other people for it. But it's not other people, it's inside of me. I have blind spots, and I need to own up to that. I need to own up to my vulnerability, and I need to own up to my darkness also. So I think, especially on the path of love, to integrate that, to be human, to allow yourself to feel that, for me, that is the inner work, and that's when real transformation happens. Not by trying to be good or trying to save the planet, because then the shadow will always act out from the back door. We have a dark side, and we have to face it, we have to look at it. And it might be your vulnerability. It might be your anger, your hatred. Why there is so much sexual abuse today? Where does it come from? Where is that whole, the situation between men and women? Why is that so challenging today? Why do we have we have more teenager suicides today than ever before? So the climate change, you look at, we're destroying this beautiful planet. It's not like people out there who are doing it, it's in me it happens. If I can't own my own darkness, if I can't really own my vulnerability, both sides, I think the shift will not happen. I think it's a very important point. And to go to a blind spot is it feels humiliating. We have so many judgments about ourselves. We all try to be good. We want to be good people. We're good meditators. We help the poor, blah, 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 blah. But really go inside and own that other part of you takes tremendous courage. Takes tremendous courage. Do we all have it? Of course. How does it play out? You're stressed out as a mom, and you suddenly scream at your kids. There it is, yeah? Or you're stressed out with your husband, he didn't come home, and you become bitchy and negative and cutting and castrating towards him. There it is. Yeah, it's very human to be like that. We're all like that. But we gotta own our own stuff and own who we are and not trying to work it out through the outside. And then the giving comes from an authentic place, not from I try to be good and everybody else has to be good too. But it comes from a real, authentic, honest place. To make it clear, I'm not saying meditation is not good. I'm not saying that at all. I think meditation is absolutely essential, but we have to do our own inner homework. We got to learn to be human. And for me, it is about accepting our humanness. It's not about trying to be better. It's not about spiritual arrogance and I am so fantastic and I'm much better than everybody else and we are saving the world. No. I have to own my own humanness, just like everybody else does. And I think that is the only way where some bigger transformation can happen for all of us. At least that's the inner work I do. And I totally believe in it. We created many years ago this process, Path of Love. It's a 7-day process where we're trying to integrate all this into the work. But yeah, what can we do? I don't know how much time do I have. I have no time awareness right now, so I can pace myself. Do you know how much we have? 10 minutes. Thank you. So owning my shadow, even to look at that, even to be willing to say, when you're with your partner or somebody gives you some feedback, you're willing to say, hey, I want to look at that. Yeah? And usually blind spots are called blind spots because we don't see them. But who sees them? Your partner will, guaranteed. They know exactly where your blind spot is. But the problem is, well, most of us will go, no, that's not me. No, you are, We would defend. We become really upset. Partly owning the shadow, it's so much associated with self-judgment, with criticism. We feel embarrassed that we are partly human again, that we're on this earth again, that I still have those feelings. We want to be beyond it. We want to be out and about. We don't want to be in and really honoring those feelings and owning them and take responsibility for it. We want to be away from it. The next thing for me, very, very important, is facing helplessness. As I said, there are situations in your life where you're faced with helplessness, and in that helplessness, something deep and existential really can happen. So much of our life is about controlling, making money, controlling, working it out, being responsible, doing. Allowing that helplessness for me has really created a big, big shift in my inner. Just to see, sometimes we're on our knees, even as a therapist, but also in my life, and you're absolutely helpless. And for me, that helplessness opens up my vulnerability, and that vulnerability opens up my heart, and that heart opens up my real love. Not performing love, but real love. Whatever that is, it's just a word. So, of course, we have to face shame and our own judgments instead of acting them out. There's so much racism happening today. The black, the yellow, the who's good, who's not good. We gotta stop that and look into ourselves. It's all related to myself instead of acting it out. Otherwise, we're not going to change the world if we anyway can change it. That's the same looking at the abuse, the violence, the self-condemnation. You might not be obviously violent, but in your mind, you might be violent. You look at the mirror and you look at yourself and criticize yourself, and within 10 minutes, you chop yourself to pieces. Yeah, that's also violence. You compare yourself constantly to somebody else. That's violence. That's abuse. That's part of the shadow. And yes, we're embarrassed about it. We don't want to talk about that. We don't want to feel that. No, we'll go, yeah, I'm good. I'm nice. I'm bum. So, take responsibility, of course, it's not about acting out. It's about owning it in here, and then the shift can happen inside of me. That's where the real shift can happen. And then out of that, whatever you need to do, whatever your destiny is, you will follow. And that's different for every person. Everybody has their own, whatever that will be. And then allow ourselves to feel vulnerability. Even today, even when you talk to somebody, instead of interacting from the mind, just for a moment, go and really feel your heart and be there for a moment and see what is there. I'm vulnerable, I'm sensitive. When you talk to me, I feel like, oops, I don't know what to say. Instead of, ba-ba-ba-bum, 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 what we normally do. So, and of course, part of it is bring these human limitations to light. Really allow myself to feel that limitation instead of trying to be God. We want to be God, of course. It's much easier to be God or to be superhuman. But to really feel that stuff and really allow yourself to feel I'm vulnerable, I'm shaky, I'm sensitive, whatever. I'm angry, I'm pissed off. Just to be honest. And of course, for me, always most important, accept that we don't know everything. We really don't. We want to know everything. That's part of our control. We're trying to follow many different holy books, but the truth is, I know nothing. That's the truth. But what I do know, my heart knows. And if I'm honest here and open and willing to be vulnerable and to own whatever I have hidden inside, whatever is there, it will guide me. Their guidance will happen. Aha, I must have done the wrong thing. So, and that, for me, is what that helplessness created in me, and what, of course, is part of the path of love, and that receptivity. You are here with both of your hands open, and with a nakedness. Once you dare to be vulnerable here, there's a nakedness there. And that then creates what I call prayer. Not prayer, a demand list to God, what should be or should not be, but prayer, a sense of accepting that helplessness, standing in that, allowing myself to be there in that openness, in that nakedness, and also in that receptivity. And then in that acceptance to where I am. And through that prayer, then, for me personally, that might not be so for you, a real connection happened to something that is way bigger than me. Way bigger than that. But I have to make the cup of my heart has to have space. If it's full, nothing will pour into it. Nothing can get in. It's not possible. So I got to be receptive. In order to be receptive, I've got to be vulnerable. So in order to be vulnerable, I got to let go of my defenses. So you can see, step by step by step. And in order to do that, we're human. And then for me, something bigger really happens and something opens up where I feel held by something much, much bigger than just me. And whatever that is, I don't even want to give it words because it's beyond words, and everybody will have their own personal experience. So for me, that is the deeper meaning of that vulnerability and that receptivity. Yeah, and that vulnerability. And that leads me to, thank you. So thank you very much. Thank you.